Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the BACP's Remote Small Business Expo. My name is Stellan Atufe with the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, otherwise known as BACP. Before we get started, I want to provide some information. This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred method. We encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box to send your questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Now we will start the session on launching a business in the city of Chicago. Please give a virtual welcome to our panelists from BACP, Brian Anders, from the Small Business Center, Sunny Choi from Public Way, Amanda Whalen from Hospitality, Paul Hubbs from the Small Business Advocacy Team, and Miguel Compass from the Office of Labor Standards. So our panelists, please say next slide when you want me to advance your slides as I will follow along with the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Anders. I'm a supervisor with the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection and the Licensing Division. We are going to start this morning's presentation by doing a little Licensing 101. Okay, to get us started here, just so you're aware, most businesses operating in Chicago require a City of Chicago business license. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. Most of them are going to fall under if they are a business that's licensed by the state of Illinois. This doesn't pertain to all businesses licensed by the state of Illinois, just some of them. Typically, the ones that fall under the jurisdiction of the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, which is where you would get doctors, attorneys, architects, insurance agents, so forth. So we handle licensing outside of that. We also don't handle anything that is done with general contractors, electrician, plumbing. That's handled by the Department of Buildings. So what are the types of business licenses that you can expect to be looking at when you either apply online or come in to see us? So a limited business license is going to fall under the general retail administrative office type licenses. This is the majority of the licenses that we issue. A regulated business license require sometimes a little more information, sometimes additional inspections. So for example, if you're doing tattoo, the Department of Public Health is going to want to inspect it. If you're doing a hotel, we do some document background checks, and we also do fingerprinting. And then there's our specialized license where they get even a little bit more in depth, where you're talking about things like liquor and tobacco and children's facilities, so forth, because these licenses do require us to do a little bit more due diligence for a couple of reasons. One, they're a little bit more high profile, or they could be something where we have had issues in the past. So we're making sure that everyone who's properly licensed is following the municipal code as expected. So the standard application requirements are, we are going to need your legal name. So if you're applying as a sole proprietor, that would just be your name. If you are applying as a legal entity, then we need the legal entity name that you have registered with the Illinois Secretary of State. We also need your DBA name, which is your doing business as, or it's your business assumed name. That you take care of through Cook County. We need the location that you are attempting to open your business and what is the square footage of that location. We need a detailed description of all business activities that are going to take place at that location. And if you are in a business such as like fitness training, where you do go visit customers, then we need to know if you do have that as a part of your business activity. And then from all applicants, we need a valid government-issued photo ID. If you are applying as a legal entity, we will need your state of Illinois file number. We will also need your federal employer identification number. The EIN you obtain through the IRS, the US IRS. And then if you are doing any sort of retail or wholesale sales, then we will need an Illinois Department of Revenue account ID. This is also referred to as a tax ID. As I had mentioned previously, some businesses do require a little bit more due diligence in order to issue the license. So we do require some criminal background check. We do require ownership. So if you're doing something where it's liquor licensing, we're going to need every owner who owns a minimum of 5% of the business. And if it's outside of that, then it's any owner who owns a minimum of 25% of the business. And in some cases, we are also going to want to know who the on-site managers are at those locations. And as I mentioned before, this applies to things like daycare, like tobacco, like liquor. Before anyone commits to an actual location, we do ask you to not sign any lease and come check with us first to make sure that the business location that you're looking at will be accepted for zoning. Because if it's not accepted by zoning and you've already signed the lease, you're on the hook for a lease, and the location, you may not be able to open up your business there. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about zoning. So every business license that has a brick and mortar location or is a home-based business does have to go through a zoning process. The city of Chicago is divided into multiple zoning districts, and each zoning district has its own regulations that dictate what is allowed to be done in that area. So what does a zoning review include? Well, it's going to be a proper classification of the activities that are allowed in that specific area. Is that specific location compliant? So is there parking available? Is landscape done in conjunction with what's required? And then with the building requirements as well, was there work done on the building? And if so, we may need to see permits for that. Same thing if you have a driveway. So if you are, say, a dry cleaner and you have a drop off, or you're a drive-through fast food restaurant, we're going to have to make sure you have a driveway permit, and that you get through the Chicago Department of Transportation. So you can always confirm your zoning status in advance. You can call the business center at 312-74-GO-BIZ. You're more than welcome to come in and visit us at the Small Business Center located in City Hall, room 800. We are open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. You can also email all one word business licensing at cityofchicago.org. So some reminders for zoning, like I said earlier, don't make any financial commitments to a location unless you have already confirmed that the zoning district is permitted for that activity. And please note that just because a business that was in that location prior, that doesn't necessarily mean that that type of business is still available in that location. The zoning designation could have changed. So it's the rule of thumb is always come talk to us first. And then when checking your zoning requirements, make sure you carefully examine the requirements for a proposed location, and then just make sure that you're compliant with any regulations for those locations. So things that you may come into during zoning is you could have to require a special use permit or a variation, which would be granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some of the special use permits would be nail salons, beauty salons, barber shops, massage, pawn shops, taverns, tattoo places, so forth. And then the variation would fall under amusement PPAs, so public place of amusement. And now I'm going to turn it over, excuse me, I'm going to turn it over to Sunny Choi, who's going to take it from here for public way use.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Sonny Choi. I'm with the Public Waste Use Unit in BACP. I am the supervisor up here. So, public way use, the city sidewalk and parkways are considered the public way. That means the city is the landlord for a business or property owner to occupy public way. A permit is required. There are three broad categories of public way use occupation. Over street level, that means above grade, canopies, awnings, signs, light fixtures, balconies, banners, bay windows. That would be over. On street level, at grade level, or on the ground would be basically planters, decorative pavers, ballards, windscreen, kiosks, sidewalk cafes, sidewalk signs. They're the A-frame type signs. Um, Under street level, below grade is what we would call it, is like vaults, conduits, caisson foundations, earth retention systems, irrigation system, grease basins, grease suppressors. Most common types of public way use that we permit are signs, awnings, sidewalk cafes, canopies, light fixtures, banners, fence, trash containers, security cameras, and planters. Okay. How long is a public way use permit good for? Public way use users permits is good for 5 years, but you are billed annually. The only permit that is not for a 5-year term is for sidewalk cafes. The sidewalk cafe permit is an annual permit with a term of March 1st to the last day of February 28th. How do business know when a public use permit is needed? So anything encroaching outside the property line on, over, or above grade requires a public way use permit. Can a public way use permit be transferred from business to business at that location? While public way use permits are technically transferable, there are some situations when permits for unchanged and fixed installation structures can be transferred. Example includes like vaults, light fixtures, or a canopy awning without lettering or business logos. What can be done for business that requires a public way use permit but are regulated through the state or own the property? To create a public way use permit account with the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, they will need to fill out a business information sheet and submit it as part of the application. To begin the application process, you can visit us online at ipi.cityofchicago.org, or you can go to the city's website and you can find us in public way use. This new web portal improves the efficiency and effectiveness of public way use permitting by allowing the applicants and existing permittees to apply for new permits, renewal existing permits, and pay fees, annual fees, and outstanding debt fees online. To create an account, begin the application process, and to check on permit status. Complete the application. The applicants are expected to provide the following. The application requires this. Many may vary depending on the type of permits you guys are applying for. Applicant information, public way use information, that's including the location of the public way use, where a sign or awning might be, photographs of the location, plans or diagrams, and general liability insurance with proper liability limited amount, depending on the type of permits, and noting that the city of Chicago is additional insured as a certificate holder. Submit a complete public use application to BACP for intake review. Once the application is submitted, it is referred to the appropriate inspecting department for approval. The system will cancel out an application after 60 days on inactive on the user end. At this point, the application cannot be reopened, and the applicant will need to resubmit a new application. Renewing the permits. Each permit is valid for 5 years. Applicants will be billed each year. The general liability insurance must be resubmitted and remain current each year, or the permit will automatically void. At the end of the 5-year term, the application process will need to be repeated. So any city debt must be resolved prior to issuance or renewal of any public way use permits. If you are operating without a public way use permit, using the public way use without the proper permits can be subject to a removal order and fines between $25 to $500 per violation, depending on the type of public way use permits used occupation. Sidewalk cafes, there's special considerations. So sidewalk cafe permits have a 12-month term and must be applied for and issued every year. Sidewalk cafe seasons begin March 1st of every year and ends on the last day of February of every year. The annual non-refundable sidewalk cafe permit fees vary depending on the size and the location of the sidewalk cafe. However, the minimum sidewalk cafe permit fee is $600.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Weiland. I'm the Assistant Commissioner over Hospitality Licensing. So for this presentation today, I will basically be building off everything that Brian Anders said earlier in Licensing 101, but focusing on liquor and public places of amusement. As Brian said, those are more specialized licenses. If you are looking to open this type of business, we will be gathering a lot of information from you. But today we're just going to go over the very basic types of licenses that you could apply for. So there are 2 main licenses if you are looking to sell alcohol on your premises for consumption on site. The first is a tavern license. This is when your primary business activity is the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol, and anything else that you may provide as secondary. So you may also sell food, you may have live music, but your main business activity is the sale of alcohol. The second type of license, which is the most popular liquor license in the city, is called a consumption on premises incidental activity license, or COPIA for short. This is where the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol is secondary. So think restaurants, theaters, anything where you're out for another purpose, but alcohol is just sort of a bonus. The third main type of liquor license that we have is called a packaged goods license. This is when you're selling original capped sealed alcohol. Think of your Jewel, your corner store, your liquor store, your specialty wine shop. All of those places would have a packaged good license so that people can buy the alcohol and leave with it, consume it at their own home. There are 2 popular add-on liquor licenses. So you have to have an underlying tavern or COPIA license to apply for either of these licenses. But the first is an outdoor patio. Obviously became very popular during COVID, so everyone could drink outside. But this allows the consumption on premises of alcohol for outdoor space that is adjacent to the premises. And then we also offer a late hour liquor license. So normally for consumption on premises and tavern licenses, you must stop the sale and consumption of alcohol at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. on Saturday into Sunday morning. A late hour license would allow you to extend those hours till 4 a.m. or till 5 a.m. again that Saturday into Sunday morning. I do note here though that by ordinance, there are some wards that prohibit new late hour liquor licenses, and those are listed there. Building off of what Brian went over a little bit, zoning is absolutely the number one most important thing to check before you come in and apply for licenses, before you're signing leases. Make sure that the underlying allowable land use allows you to have the business that you want. In addition, for alcohol sales, we have moratoriums throughout the city. A moratorium is in the exclusive control of the local alderman. They have the ability to basically create spaces within their ward where new liquor licenses are prohibited from being issued. There are limited exceptions to the moratoriums. The most common exception is for a restaurant, but I encourage everyone to check whether or not there's a moratorium in place before applying for a liquor license. And then with liquor, we also have what we just commonly refer to as 100-foot restrictions. So you are not allowed to have a liquor license within 100 feet of libraries, churches, schools, without first applying for a distance reduction, which is an additional process that you will have to go through on top of just your underlying liquor license application. I do want to mention, I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, that our office does offer proximity restriction measurements, which would allow you to check for these sort of restrictions that may be in place before you commit to opening a business in a location. The cost of those is $250. If you decide to move forward with your license application, that $250 is credited to your license fee. And then just briefly, public place of amusement licensing is one of the more complicated license processes in the city. So just a brief touch point on that. A public place of amusement license, which we commonly call PPA, allows you to present amusement activity to the public. And we have some examples there. Nightclubs, movie theaters, those are kind of the more popular ones. It is required anytime that your official occupancy, which is measured by the Department of Buildings, is over 100 and you are providing an amusement activity. But it is also required anytime you are providing entertainment that's open to the public and charging a fee. So even if your bar, restaurant space, your official occupancy from Department of Buildings is only 75 people, if you are charging $10 to see a band that's inside your premises, you would need a public place of amusement license. There are strict zoning requirements, location restrictions, all of the sort of things built into liquor. Most of those also apply to public place of amusement, except for the moratoriums. Always like to emphasize that this is a very complicated license. I highly encourage you to come down to City Hall or schedule a phone consultation with one of our hospitality business consultants. Again, before purchasing, before entering into any kind of lease, go through what those requirements may be before you're stuck with a lease that you can't really use. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Hobbs. I'm the Program Director for the Small Business Advocacy Unit. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of our marquee programs. I'll start with our Neighborhood Business Development Center program, or commonly known as our NBDC program. In that program, we have over 70 delegate agencies, or grantees as they're called, that are all Chicago-based nonprofit business service organizations. These organizations work in partnership with the city to improve the small business ecosystem in the city and provide free hyper-local support to business owners and startup entrepreneurs throughout the city. They also serve to provide expert training and resources to help address common challenges and support key city priorities. They also function to deliver highly specialized business programs and services. Some of these programs that they provide are broken up into 7 categories. There's a place-based generalist category, which is designed to provide support for general business needs. They also provide a service under the umbrella called Business Stage Specialist. And that's a service that's designed to target business life cycle strategies or provide targeted business life cycle strategies to businesses and entrepreneurs. The capital specialist category is a category that's designed to provide expert assistance with assisting businesses, helping them find access to capital. Cultural specialist category is that in which the neighborhood business development centers provide targeted cultural and language business support. Additionally, there's an industry specialist category, which is designed to provide support to key foundational and growth industries. Also, there's the innovation specialist category, which is designed to provide support for new business models, cooperatives, and incubators. And finally, we have a category which is called peer-to-peer training. And that's a category in which certain neighborhood business development centers within our program provide specific designated types of training for their fellow NBDCs. You can find more information on this at chicago.gov/NBDC. Next is our Chicago Business Center program. And that's a program that consists of 8 Chicago-based business service organizations located in neighborhoods to serve as regional hubs that are designed to provide business licensing assistance and other resources for small businesses. The CBCs, as they're called, provide support to startup entrepreneurs and existing business owners who need the following types of assistance: business licensing, public way use permits, and city resources support. They also provide assistance in funding for underrepresented populations. Additionally, they provide professional services for very sector-specific guidance. And in the graph, you can see, on the map, you can see the regional locations of our 8 Chicago business centers. More information on our CBCs can be found at chicago.gov/CBC. And lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about one of our newest programs within our portfolio of programs. It's called the EDGE program, an acronym for Encouraging Diversity, Growth, and Equity Initiative. Now, the EDGE program is designed to serve as an essential component to help develop, strengthen, and advocate for Chicago's minority and women-owned business enterprises, commonly known as MEBE and WEBE supplier community. This initiative is designed to support and advocate for small businesses, or for the small business ecosystem, I should say, by creating a robust initiatives and programs that targets minority and women-owned business enterprises, assisting their increased participation in economic development and government contracting. Additionally, this initiative is designed and committed to cultivating a competitive and diverse economic environment that drives equitable access to contracts and supports growth for success. Next, I'd like to turn this over to Miguel Campos.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miguel Campos, and I am the Director of the Office of Labor Standards, which is contained within the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what it is that the Office of Labor Standards does. So our main priority is we're dedicated to promoting and enforcing Chicago's labor laws, and we'll touch in a little bit on what the current laws are. We seek to engage communities and protect workers through a strong investigation and enforcement regime. And then we also process complaints, we conduct investigations, we mediate disputes, we direct settlement proceedings, we issue violations, and if necessary, we can seek licensure discipline against employers who are violating Chicago's labor laws. So these are the current labor standard laws. So we have a minimum wage ordinance or law that sets the minimum wage for the city of Chicago. This is updated every July 1st. It's currently $15.80 for a large employer, which we categorize as anyone with 21 or more employees. And it's $15 for a small employer, which is anyone with 4 to 20 employees. There's been updates and changes to the minimum wage. In particular, there's a substandard or a minimum wage for tipped workers. So that is, there's a tipped wage credit that is 40% at the moment. So over the next 5 years, that will be slowly eliminated. And then the idea is that on July 1st of 2028, whatever the city's minimum wage is at the time will be the same for both tipped workers and non-tipped workers. We have an ordinance that protects people from wage theft. And then we have a current paid sick leave ordinance, which is transitioning to paid leave and paid sick and safe leave ordinance. We have a fair work week or scheduling ordinance. We have an anti-retaliation ordinance and a domestic worker contract requirement ordinance. And in the next slides, we'll touch a little bit more on these. So the first thing that I want to mention is the transition. So our current paid sick leave ordinance mandates that employers give employees 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 40 hours worked. This is changing. So on November 9th, our city council passed the updated ordinance, which is called Chicago Paid Leave and Paid Sick and Safe Leave Ordinance. On December 7th, there was additional amendments, and it pushed the implementation date until July 1st. This is only applicable to employers operating within the geographical boundaries of the city. And in essence, employers will not have to provide paid leave separate from paid sick leave. So, and going from 5 days to 10 days, but we can discuss that more in detail on the preceding slides. So with regards to paid leave, what we intend by that is it's time that is provided by an employer and can be used for any reason of the employee's choosing, and it's not paid sick leave. Paid sick leave is time that is provided by an employer and can be used to recover from an illness, take care of a family member, or address domestic violence and public health emergencies. So this is accrual and usage of time for the new ordinance. So we're changing the rate at which people earn it. So you earn paid leave 1 hour for every 35 hours worked, up to 40 hours or 5 days in a year. Again, this can be used for any reason, but the request may be denied by an employer. After July 1st, employee can request to use this time 90 days after July 1st, or start of employment, whichever date is later. And then there's a minimum usage increment. So people should be able to use it in half-day increments. So 4 hours would be a minimum amount that an employee can use any paid leave that they've earned, whether it's accrued or front-loaded. Paid sick leave, 1 hour for every 35 hours worked, again, up to 40 hours or 5 days in a year or 12-month period. And then this can be used to recover from illness, take care of a family member, address domestic violence issues, including going to court, meeting with your attorneys, etc., and any public health emergency such as the COVID pandemic that we experienced 4 years ago. Paid sick leave under the new ordinance will be available to be used by an employee 30 days after July 1st of 2024, or 30 days after the start of their employment, whichever date is later. And then that minimum usage amount for this is 2 hours. There are required postings that the city requires employers have at their place of business. So it's an informational flyer. It contains information on our minimum wage, our paid sick leave, our wage theft ordinance, points people to resources and how they can obtain information for human trafficking, and how they can contact the Office of Labor Standards and file a complaint. This is updated every July 1st. So obviously this is our current version. And given the new ordinance that I just covered, this will look vastly different come July 1st. The proposed updates are already up on our website. So our website is chicago.gov/labor standards. I briefly touched on a scheduling law or fair work week notice. So this is a required posting if that ordinance applies to you. I know we're not going to cover it in detail today, but if applicable, if you're a covered employer under this ordinance, it's tied to 7 specific industries. But again, this has to be posted at that location. For additional information on our Fair Work Week ordinance, you can visit our website, which we'll cover in a little more detail in a little bit. So I mentioned that we are engaged in processing and investigating complaints. This is our complaint and investigation process. So complaints can be submitted via form, either online or by mail. You can call 311 or use the city's SHI 311 app. And again, resources are widely available on our Office of Labor Standards website. After we receive a complaint, we go through an intake or triage process. We review the complaint, ensure that it is under the jurisdiction of the city's Office of Labor Standards, and then conduct an interview with the complainant or complainant. If necessary, we'll issue a subpoena seeking records from the employer to either prove or disprove what is being alleged in the complaint. If we do find violations, we enter into settlement talks with the employer. These are not necessarily tied solely to monetary issues. There can be non-financial remedies that we're seeking, like updating the current policies, making sure like managers and employees are retrained, etc. And then we also have an option of either filing at the Department of Administrative Hearings, referring cases to the mayor's licensing division, or filing at circuit court. I know I've covered a lot of pertinent material and there's a lot of changes coming. I once again want to refer people to our website. So the website is a valuable resource tool for employees and employers alike. Each ordinance under our jurisdiction has its own section or click box. Each subsection contains information on the ordinance, applicable rules pertaining to the ordinance, FAQ documents. The information on the website is available in the top 5 languages spoken in the city. And once again, that website is chicago.gov/labor standards. And then again, with the understanding that I've covered a lot of material in a very short amount of time, we do have webinars on all of the ordinances. With the upcoming changes with this July 1st, we will have a dedicated webinar schedule in April, May, and June. They'll be held in English and in Spanish. All of our previous webinars are also available at our department YouTube page for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. The YouTube page is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. It contains recordings of 45 webinars that we've held in the past. Many of the webinars are available in Spanish along with their English version. And we've held webinars on the upcoming changes. On December 13th, we had a webinar on January 22nd. We have a webinar scheduled for April 18th. And then there'll be many more webinars. We are also partnering up with many of the organizations that Paul Hobbs, our previous presenter, spoke on. So we will have dedicated webinars with our MBDC partners and our local chambers as well. But again, I would say registering for our newsletter, department newsletter, and then visiting the OLS website, you'll be able to get an updated schedule of upcoming outreach events. And then here's just general contact information for the department. I'll turn things over to Stella.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you to all of our panelists. We have time for a few questions. In the effort of time, we're only going to have about between 5 to 6 questions. If you have any questions that have not been answered, please send an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Again, that email is bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. First question, if your business is in a commercial kitchen and you want to sell packed liquor, what license would you need?
Packaged goods license if it's not for consumption on the premises.
This is a zoning question. I did some research and it stated that I would need a special use zoning for a beauty salon that are less than 500 feet away from another business. Is this still required if I am renting a suite in a building that has other beauty businesses?
Yes, it would be required. And what you would need to do is come in and apply so that we could give you a determination letter that shows that it was denied, because the Zoning Board of Appeals will need that.
I work from home as a remote medical coder and consultant. I have one employee who also works remotely at her home. I sometimes go out to consult, but it's usually done via computer or phone. Do I need a license?
If you are running a business, then you need a license. If you are an employee of a business, then you do not need a license. That's how the home-based business licensing works.
If you have a license with the city, do Airbnb hosts still need to register with the city?
Yes.
What kind of businesses can you run legally from home?
There's a variety of businesses that you can do home-based. I mean, you can do sales, you can do consulting, you can do media. The key is that you can't use any more than 10% of your living space. And when it comes to sales, you can't use your home for storage. You'd have to do drop ship. And if you're doing any sort of consulting or meeting with people, you can't have more than 3 people come to your home a day to meet. So we highly recommend, if you're doing meetings at home, it would be much better to do Zoom or Teams or something where you could do it remotely.
Can you please discuss license and zoning for one person, creative business like art, fashion, craft objects?
So it kind of a broad question. If you're doing something like that, the first thing is, if you're crafting, you couldn't do it from home. because that'd be considered manufacturing. So you would need a brick and mortar location. And then something like that, though, you would really just be licensed for, miscellaneous manufacturing and retail sales. That would fall under just a limited business license.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. Miguel, this is for you. Does the Office of Labor Standards, especially for anti-retaliation, apply to employers who have remote employees that live in Chicago?
Yes, all of Chicago's labor laws protect people as long as they're working within the geographical boundaries of the city. So if your employer is based in Dallas, for example, and you work from home, then like you're eligible to earn paid leave, paid sick leave, minimum wage, you're able to file complaints, and then the anti-retaliation ordinance would also apply to you.
And does the new ordinance and minimum wage laws apply to part-time employees?
Yes, so there are detailed definitions of like when someone becomes a covered employee. In essence, for paid sick leave and minimum wage, if you're for paid leave and paid sick leave, even if you're a part-time employee and you work 80 hours within any 120-day period, then you are a covered employee. And then for minimum wage, it's anyone who's conducting 2 hours or more within any 2-week period. So yes, it covers part-time employees.
Thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your expertise. And thank you again to our attendees for joining us for our second webinar session of the day.